Have you ever wondered, before glass skyscrapers dominated London's skyline and before the whistle of the underground became the city's heartbeat, what the world's greatest capital looked like? Today, I'm not inviting you to watch an ordinary documentary. I'm inviting you to step into a time machine. With the power of AI restoration technology, we will tear through the fog of history and travel back to the year 1810. This is London in the Regency Era, a city standing at a crossroads of destiny. On one side lies the romance and elegance of courtly balls. On the other, the searing heat of an industrial revolution just beginning to take shape. We will stroll along cobblestone streets that have never known electric light, listen to the clatter of horse hooves striking rain-soaked roads, and touch the pulse of a generation that laid the foundations of the modern world. Why is London in 1810 such a haunting wonder? It is the site of gentlemen in towering top hats stepping out of exclusive clubs in St. James's, right beside grimy children struggling to steer small boats along the trash-choked Thames. This is a city in the midst of transformation. The last flickering oil lamps are about to be replaced by the eerie bluish glow of gaslight, and horse-drawn carriages reign supreme on every road. In this video, I'm not just telling a story, I'm inviting you to live it, to feel the heartbeat of a capital city standing on the threshold of the greatest industrial revolution in history. Are you ready to become a time traveler? Follow me. London in 1810 is waiting to be explored. Opening fog and coal. Welcome to a London you've never seen, a London forgotten by time. Close your eyes for just a moment and set aside the glass skyscrapers that dominate the modern skyline or the dazzling LED lights of today's Piccadilly Circus. As I guide you through the doorway of time, back to a capital standing at a crossroads of destiny. This is London in the Regency Era, a living, breathing entity where the refined romance of the aristocracy struggles daily against the raw harshness of the early industrial age. I stand here in the midst of a murky morning, tasting the brackish tang of the Thames mist, mingled with the pungent smell of coal, seeping into every fiber of my clothes. Can you feel it? This is a London that never sleeps, a London ablaze with boundless ambition. Beneath that dense fog obscuring the view lies the frantic pulse of millions of people, from proud gentlemen in tailcoats to grease-stained workers striving to turn the gears of the world. This is London as it was 200 years ago, a London of coal smoke, of secrets hidden in the fog, and of an iron will preparing to reshape the entire modern world. Old London Bridge, a bizarre wonder on treacherous waters. Pause for a moment and turn your gaze downstream along the Thames. You are beholding the strangest and most haunting wonder of London. In 1810, the Old London Bridge. In 1810, the bridge had already stood for over 600 years. It was unlike any bridge you had ever seen. With its 19 uneven stone arches, it resembled a stone monster crawling across the Thames. On its surface, the clatter of horse-drawn wheels on cobblestones echoed alongside the shouts of coachmen in their Regency attire. The narrow space was thick with the smell of horse smoke and the dust of an empire transitioning into the industrial age. Look down beneath the arches, and you'll understand why Londoners of the time called passing by boat here shooting the bridge. The stone arches were absurdly narrow, turning the once gentle Thames into a violent cascade with a difference in water level of nearly 2 meters. A chill runs through me as I watch enormous wooden sailing vessels lying motionless, waiting for the tide for hours on end. Only the most reckless watermen dared to cross those swirling currents. As the tide fell, a deadly game played in the very heart of the capital. London Bridge had become an obstacle to progress. Too narrow for traffic, too hazardous for ships, and too aged to endure. Yet, even in its decrepitude, it held a tragic beauty. It had witnessed the fall of dynasties, great fires, and bitter winters when fairs were held atop the frozen Thames. The bridge was the last living witness to ancient London, before it was replaced by the steel and concrete spans of a new era. Pall Mall. When light changed an urban destiny. History does not turn only through monuments of stone, but also through the very first rays of light. Leaving behind the moss-covered arches, we step into Pall Mall, where a quiet yet radiant revolution is about to change humanity's understanding of night forever. We are standing on Pall Mall, a road that leads not only to the palace, but also guides humanity into an entirely new era. Look closely at this very moment. In 1810, Pall Mall holds a title the entire world would envy, the first street on the planet to be fully illuminated by gaslight. Through AI-restored imagery, you can clearly see the difference. Gone is the dim, flickering yellow glow, heavy with smoke of traditional oil lamps and candles. In its place flows a pale, ethereal blue light, shimmering softly from exquisitely cast-iron lampposts. As I watch the faces of the passers-by, I can see it clearly. This is not just a new technology. It is a kind of magic. Gaslight has done the unthinkable. It has stretched the day and pronounced the death of darkness. It washes over the ancient red brick walls of St. James's Palace, transforming streets that were once havens for crime into glittering runways beneath the night sky. But look a little closer, and you'll notice the lamplighters hunched over the valves, an entirely new profession that has just been born. I can feel the warmth radiating from the lamps, along with a faint, unfamiliar sharpness of gas in the air. That is the smell of the future. The moment the first gas flame ignited here was the moment humanity declared victory over urban darkness forever. London in 1810, thanks to Pall Mall, was no longer a capital that fell asleep. When the sun went down, it became the first true city that never sleeps of the modern world. But London in 1810 was not defined only by the glittering glow of gaslight or the lavish balls of the West End. If Pall Mall symbolized a radiant future, then following the Thames eastward, a colossal shadow still loomed, reminding us of the empire's absolute power and ruthless severity, the Tower of London. The Tower of London, a fortress of secrets and fear. I look up at the White Tower looming through the fog of 1810. At this moment, it is not a place for tourist visits, but the iron heart of a nation on red alert. In the midst of a life and death struggle with Napoleon, this fortress stands as the monarchy's most powerful warning. Those gray stone walls seem to breathe out the cold of centuries, preserving within them not only weapons, but the very soul of an empire bracing itself against the storm. At this moment, within its formidable defenses, lies a strange mixture that leaves me in awe. Can you hear it? The wild roars of lions and tigers from the royal menagerie still confined in narrow iron cages beneath the tower. The furious cries of the beasts blend with the sharp clang of hammers from the royal mint and the vast armories. I see thousands of muskets stacked high against the ceilings, ready for decisive battles across distant seas. This is a London hoarding every fragment of strength to face its destiny. But perhaps what tightens my chest the most is the darkness hidden behind those narrow window slits. With the specter of revolution from France haunting the ruling elite, the Tower of London becomes a place of confinement for traitors and political prisoners. I imagine the lonely echo of a prisoner's footsteps through damp, shadowed stone corridors, where flickering torchlight is barely enough to reveal the desperate words carved into the walls in the hours before judgment. Here, history is not written in ink on pristine, fragrant pages. It is carved by the endurance of soldiers, by the labored breaths of prisoners, and by the suffocating majesty of a kingdom that never accepts retreat. The Tower of London in 1810, both a glittering treasury and a prison without escape, stands immovable as an eternal reminder of the price of power and freedom. Dawn at Covent Garden, the rhythm of 4 a.m. Leaving behind the ghosts of power and the chilling silence of the Tower of London, I lead you back upstream to the place where the city's heartbeat truly begins. Let your ears adjust to the rising clamor, because we are about to step into a world where the boundary between luxury and poverty is no longer marked by stone walls, but by the very lines of mud etched across the streets. As the clock strikes 4 in the morning, I find myself at the heart of Covent Garden. Through the lens of AI reconstruction, a scene both chaotic and brimming with life unfolds beneath the gray dawn. Look closely, this is not the elegant modern shopping district, but a true arena of survival in London 1810. Amid the rushing crowd, there is a distinct flavor of London that no history book can fully capture, a suffocatingly intense blend, the smell of damp straw, the stench of horse manure on streets that are never truly clean, tightly entwined with the pure fragrance of thousands of rose branches freshly cut from the countryside. I take a deep breath of air thick with human presence, and coal smoke, feeling the heat radiating from the breaths of porters straining beneath their heavy loads. Look at that street corner, an opposition that pierces the heart. A Regency Era lady in a smooth satin gown delicately lifts her hem to avoid a filthy puddle, while right beside her, a grimy child rummages through the black mud for wilted scraps of vegetables. A London that is splendid and proud in Mayfair, yet standing on bleeding mud-caked feet in the East End. That very polarization, strangely enough, is the fuel that drives this city's engine. As I watch eyes filled with hope mixed with exhaustion, I suddenly realize this London in 1810 was not built by plans drawn on paper, but by sweat, by hardship, and by the iron will of people fighting every second to survive in one of the greatest and most merciless cities on earth. St. James's fate-defining gambles on velvet and silk. And as the sun climbs higher, washing away the last traces of fog from the stalls of Covent Garden, you step into an entirely different world. Just a few miles west of that clamorous market, the crude rumble of carts gives way to the soft tap of walking sticks on spotless pavements. We are entering St. James's, where mud yields to velvet, and where the fate of all Europe is sometimes decided over a single game of cards. Stepping through the heavy oak doors of a gentleman's club in St. James's, I feel as though I've wandered into an oasis of privilege. Through the power of AI reconstruction, the space appears breathtakingly opulent. Beeswax candles blazing in crystal chandeliers, casting a rich golden glow over walls hung with oil paintings and towering leather-bound bookshelves reaching up to the ceiling. Standing in a corner of the room, I observe faces marked by arrogance, yet shadowed by anxiety. In 1810, the specter of Napoleon still looms over the continent, and here, beside glasses of well-aged brandy, gentlemen argue fiercely about the coming Battle of Waterloo. I hear them plotting military strategies, debating the rise and fall of stock prices in India, or more simply, but more madly, placing bets worth thousands of pounds on a single horse race or an all-night game of whist. I lightly run my fingers over the green velvet cloth on the gaming table, feeling the bitterly ironic contrast. Less than an hour ago, we were watching children wading through mud to scavenge for scraps. Yet here, money flows through these gentlemen's hands, like the Thames at high tide. This is the true nerve center of the British Empire, where luxury is not merely for pleasure, but a symbol of commanding power. Beneath those towering top hats are the minds maneuvering the world's chessboard. London in 1810 now comes into sharp focus. Before me, a city built on the sweat of the poor, yet driven by the lavish ambitions of those reclining on velvet and silk. The price of luxury children in the black mud. It takes only a few minutes to travel from the gold-ringed hands shuffling cards in St. James's down to the embankment of the Thames. But here, I will show you entirely different hands, small, gaunt, and trembling as they wade through the icy water. As the tide recedes, the true face of London in 1810 is revealed behind the city's glittering velvet curtain. Standing on the embankment as the tide begins to ebb, vast stretches of black slick mud are revealed along the banks of the Thames. Through the lens of AI reconstruction, a silent army emerges from the fog, the Mudlarks, children of the mud. Look closely. Small, frail bodies, clad only in tattered rags, stooping endlessly in the biting cold of London in 1810. Watching their every movement, a wave of sorrow rises within me. While gentlemen in St. James's wager entire fortunes across green tables here, these children gamble with their lives, searching for fragments of coal, rusty nails, or any scrap of metal that might have fallen from merchant ships. Each tiny find is worth only a few pennies, yet it marks the line between a piece of stale bread and a night of hunger. I walk across the slick, clinging mud, the cold rising from the river seeping into my skin, and I come to a harsh realization. London in 1810 was the richest city in the world, yet also the most brutally exposed. The splendor of satin gowns and the brilliance of gaslit streets out there seem to have been built upon these very narrow shoulders and frost-bruised hands, the River Thames. The commercial lifeblood of an entire empire was also a grave for the smallest of dreams. Standing at the boundary between splendor and ruin, I understand that this is the true price of luxury. A great London is not made only of songs of victory, but also of silent sighs buried deep beneath the black mud. The final flame on a classical crown, perhaps to soothe the pain of a city contorting under poverty and war. A dose of spectacle was needed. I invite you to leave the icy mudflats and join the cheering crowds of the West End, where roast beef feasts and blazing fireworks strive to drown out the labored breaths of the River Thames. In October 1810, as I step out of the dark alleys of the East End, I suddenly find myself breathless before an entirely different face of London. The whole city feels like a great beast, awakened by the brilliant light of the Golden Jubilee, the celebration marking 50 years of King George III's reign. The London sky, so often choked by coal smoke and dense fog, is now torn open by the most spectacular fireworks the people of the time could imagine. Look closely, bursts of emerald green, deep crimson, and molten gold blossom overhead, casting their reflections onto the surging River Thames. The river is no longer a murky black flow, but a vast mirror inlaid with millions of shimmering fragments of light and pride. I merge into the crowd streaming toward the center, and a scene of rare wonder unfolds amid the bustling streets. Here, the lines of social division seem momentarily erased. AI Reconstruction reveals enormous public feasts where whole oxen are roasted, sizzling over massive fires right in the middle of the boulevards. The rich, fatty aroma of roasting meat drifts through every corner, driving away the acrid, suffocating stench of the industrial city. I stand still, watching the poorest of London, the Mudlark children with river mud still clinging to their feet, the porters with calloused shoulders now sitting side by side, tankards of pewter in hand, chewing contentedly on steaming pieces of meat. Flickering firelight illuminates their radiant faces, where for one brief moment, the specter of the Napoleonic Wars and the daily fear of hunger have completely faded away. Yet, as I gaze upon those dazzling halos of light, a deep, somber note continues to resonate. These may well be the final glorious moments of an old dynasty before King George III slips fully into the darkness of illness and isolation. It is like the most radiant sunset just before night truly falls. London in 1810 comes into view, a capital that could be brutally cruel to the weak, yet also generous and magnificent enough to ignite hope for an entire kingdom. This celebration was not only to honor a monarch, but a way for London to declare to the world that whether mired in mud or shrouded in gunpowder, smoke, the soul of this empire still burned with a fierce vitality that nothing could extinguish. Veil of fog, the golden beast on empty streets. As the final fireworks fade and the ashes of the great roasts fall back onto the streets, London retreats to its true self. Behind the sunset glow of a fading dynasty, a familiar monster begins to crawl up from the river, swallowing the newly lit gas lamps. In that moment, I realize that London's soul lies not only in its light, but also in its eternal veils of fog. As the clock strikes 4 in the afternoon, a phenomenon that has become one of the city's most haunting legends begins to emerge: the Great Fog. Through AI reconstruction, you can see that this is not the pure white mist of the countryside, but a monstrous haze of toxic yellow-gray, thick as honey and heavy with the stench of sulfur. Within that fog lies a brutal mixture of moisture from the River Thames and pitch-black coal smoke from millions of chimneys factories and royal hearths. This fog does more than blind the traveler, it utterly transforms London's appearance. Majestic buildings and splendid fortresses suddenly become vast ghostly silhouettes fading into the haze. In that suffocating air, I hear fear whispering. After 4 in the afternoon, London becomes a city of danger. Every blurred street corner may conceal criminals. Every footstep behind you makes you glance back in dread. I stand frozen as a carriage skids off the road in near-zero visibility, the horse's agonized scream ringing out, only to be swallowed instantly by the fog. In the final moments of this journey, London in 1810 appears before me like an unreal dream, splendid beneath its lights, yet ghostly and cruel beneath the golden fog. It is a city twisting between progress and destruction, between radiant beauty and the toxic price of revolution. As you look back on these images, do you notice something? London never truly loses its traces. Beneath the modern asphalt of Pall Mall still lingers the warmth of the very first gas pipes. Beneath the calm waters of today's Thames remain buried the fragments of lives once lived by the Mudlark children of the past. The year 1810 is not merely the past, it is the genetic code that shaped the world we live in today. It was a year of harsh yet proud contradictions, a time when humanity learned how to light up the darkness, how to defeat tyrants, and also when it began to ask its very first questions about the meaning of equality. What is London in 1810 to you? Is it the radiant light of a rising dynasty, or the weary darkness endured by countless small lives? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your reflections are the very motivation that drives me to keep uncovering memories buried by time. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey, and I look forward to meeting you again at another stop along the river of time.